This is McFly Angler.
And it starts now.
So before I start tying this, I want to let you all know this fly was originally created by Chris from Living Waters Fly Shop up in Round Rock, Texas. It was created to fish for something called a Rio cichlid, which is native to Texas. Chris has his own video on how to tie this, so you can check out that video as well. I will put a link in the description section of this video. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's get started. For a hook, you will need a barbless jig hook like these 9230s from Risen Fly. You will also need a slotted tungsten bead, and Risen has some of the best prices on quality beads I have found. Originally, Chris had used a red anodized bead, but you could really use any color bead, including any you see here and more. Today, I'm going to be using a gold bead in size 3.5. And you do want a sort of oversized bead here. The easiest way to put a bead on a hook is to place the bead in your hand and then bring the hook to the bead and place it on that way. Place the hook and bead securely in your vise. Now with slotted beads, you need to make sure that the bead sits correctly. And with these beads, you want the curved section of the slot to sit on top for a proper seating. For thread, I'm using this Viva 6/0 in brown. Now we will be doing a split thread technique for a dubbing loop of sorts. And traditionally, you will want a flat thread, but I find the 6/0 splits just fine and is a little stronger. Start the thread right behind the bead and trim or snap off the waste. Now make multiple wraps right behind the bead to build a thread dam to keep the bead from spinning. Then when the bead is secure, bring your thread down a little past the bend of the hook. Then back up a couple wraps until you're right at the start of the hook bend. Pretty much the whole fly will be tied with this Aussie possum fur, and the frosted craw color is the one that you want. Select a fairly large piece, about this big, and snip it off the swatch. Then pinch the tip of the fur and stroke out the underfur. By the way, keep this underfur as you will use it later in the fly. And in next week's tutorial, we will use this underfur as dubbing for another pattern as well. And you will be left with this. Measure out this piece to about as long as the hook shank. And then transfer that measurement to your other hand and tie it in onto the back to make a hook length tail. Also tie it in back into the bend a wrap or two so it is angled down like so. Then bring your thread back up the hook shank, making tight touching wraps, but stop just shy of the bead. Then snip off the waist and bring your thread back down the shank until you are just past the hook point. Now for some silly legs. These nymph silly legs work great. You could use any color here, but I really like these orange barred. Pull off one strand and then cut it in half. And then half again to make 4 pieces. And this will make 4 flies in total. Tie one piece in at the rear of the fly in the middle of the leg, angling downward slightly. Then pull the forward-facing section rearward and tie that in as well. Then tie it in tightly down to the base of the fur tail. And this will splay the legs out like so. Now before we go any further, you will want to trim off another large section of fur like this, and then pull out the underfur. We now will have more than enough dubbing for this fly and others, so keep that stuff for future flies. Now split the thread. Grab a needle or a bodkin and start uncording your thread by spinning it counterclockwise. Once it's spun, then run the needle down the thread like so. And spin more if you need to until it is fully uncorded. Then use the tip of the needle to split the thread and stick your finger in between to keep it open. Now start putting the possum underfur in between the split thread. You want to keep this rather sparse, but have enough to make a fairly bushy body. Now stick the guard fibers in, sticking out about a hook shank length from the thread, and cut off the fur on the other side as close as you can to the thread. Now simply spin the thread to make a dubbing brush. When spinning, the fur can trap your rubber legs, so use some scissors or your bodkin to hold the legs back. Then simply start wrapping the dubbing brush up the hook shank with touching wraps until you reach the head. And if you made this the right length, it will perfectly reach the head when you wrap down to the guard hairs. Then while stroking the fibers rearward, finish off the head with the guard hairs to make a collar on the fly. Then whip finish your fly. I like doing 2 whip finishes to make this ultra secure. And you could add head cement, but I chose not to on this fly because the smell can keep some fish species from wanting to eat it. Then we need to pick out the body with a needle or a bodkin to release any trapped fibers. The final step is to trim the bottom of the fly flat. Pull back the rubber legs slightly to get them out of the way of your scissors. You don't want to cut them off. And then make a trim on the bottom to flatten it out. Now you could leave the legs long like this, but I like to trim them slightly. Pull them out a little and then trim them slightly shorter than the tail. However, I did trim them a little too short here. You might want to keep them a little longer, but it's your fly. Do with it how you want. And there we have it, a small, easy to tie micro crayfish fly that has been proven to work for a number of species here in South Texas. And I am positive that this will work in many other areas as well. So give it a try. As you all know, I have gotten you all discounts from both www.risenfly.com and www.dooliesflyfishing.com. Doolies offers great prices on all of the name brand fly tying materials, and Risen Fly manufactures their own hooks, rods, reels, and other gear for fly fishing. Their products are top quality, and best of all, they are priced very reasonably. Not only are the prices at these 2 shops great, but like I said, they are offering all of my subscribers a discount. So use McFly at checkout when ordering from either of these shops, and you will get an additional 15% off of their already great prices. I want to also thank all of my Patreons who support me. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support this channel and also get some great perks like early access to my videos, participate in live streams, and more. So go to www.patreon.com/McFlyAngler to sign up today. I also thank all of you who share all my videos with your friends and your continued support by hitting the like buttons and subscribing. Thank you for making these videos possible. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.